Have you ever felt like two versions of you were trying to live at once? One part of you moving through the motions of daily life, while another part seems to be pulled in a completely different direction. It can feel unsettling, almost like your soul is standing at a crossroads. But instead of one clear path, you sense multiple roads unfolding at the same time. This is where the idea of overlapping dimensions comes in. When dimensions blur, so do timelines, possibilities, and sometimes even the realities we anchor ourselves to. It isn't just a poetic metaphor, it's a lived experience many people quietly face. That strange feeling of disconnection, of being out of sync with yourself, may be more than stress or fatigue. It could be a sign that dimensional boundaries are shifting around you. In this video, we'll explore not only what overlapping dimensions are, but also how they shape the soul's journey. You'll learn the signs of when you're caught between timelines, why it feels so destabilizing, and how this strange friction can actually guide you toward deeper awareness and growth. Because sometimes what feels like confusion is really the soul stretching into something greater. Let's get right in. To really understand what happens when dimensions overlap, we first need to get a clearer sense of what dimensions actually are. Too often, people imagine dimensions as stacked floors in a building. You live on the third floor, and if you evolve spiritually, you move up to the fourth or fifth. But dimensions don't work like that. They aren't levels you climb. They're frequencies that exist at the same time, like different wavelengths of light or different channels on a radio. All are broadcasting now. You just tune in to the one your awareness is most aligned with. The third dimension, often called the 3D, is the most familiar to us because it's the one that gives form and solidity. This is where matter, space, and physical action dominate. Here, life feels linear. You move from point A to point B, experience cause and effect, and relate to reality through the senses. It's the dimension of building, surviving, and interacting with the tangible. The fourth dimension adds another layer. You could think of it as the domain of time and emotion. In 4D, you experience not only what's happening physically, but also the way you feel about it, and how it connects across past, present, and future. The fourth dimension is also where memory and imagination live. It is why a single moment can stretch into forever in your perception or vanish in what feels like a blink. In this dimension, the inner and outer worlds begin to blur. The fifth dimension and those beyond it are harder to pin down with words because they're less about form and more about essence. The 5D is often described as a field of unity and energy, where archetypal intelligence, intuition, and a sense of interconnectedness come alive. Here, truth is not just observed, but felt directly as part of the fabric of existence. Beyond the fifth, awareness expands into even subtler frequencies, something mystics call higher octaves of consciousness. The important thing to grasp is that all these layers coexist. Just as you don't destroy one radio station by tuning into another, the dimensions don't cancel each other out. They overlap, interpenetrating the same space but vibrating differently. What you perceive depends on where your consciousness is focused, and this is not a fixed setting. A single day can contain moments where you are fully grounded in 3D practicality, moments where you drift into 4D emotion and memory, and moments where you suddenly glimpse 5D unity or insight. When we talk about overlapping dimensions, we're describing moments when these frequencies are not cleanly separated in your awareness. Instead of being tuned to one clear channel, you start to pick up static, or even two stations at once. This overlap can be fascinating, but it can also feel jarring. Your body, emotions, and mind are used to operating as if one dimension is the baseline, and when another frequency slips in, it creates a sense of friction. This friction is not random. It is the direct result of living in a universe where multiple realities coexist and consciousness has the power to move between them. Understanding dimensional layers in this way helps us see that what might feel like chaos is actually the natural tension of an expanded soul. Rather than being out of balance, you may simply be standing in more than one dimension at a time. So if dimensions are like frequencies that coexist, the natural question is, what does it actually mean to shift between them? This is where we need to distinguish between two experiences people often confuse: ascension and overlap. Ascension is often spoken of in spiritual traditions as a rising. It's when your baseline frequency begins to stabilize in a higher dimension. In other words, instead of dipping into 5D awareness for a fleeting insight and then slipping back into the old familiar 3D mindset, you actually start living from that expanded frequency day to day. Ascension is gradual. It feels like less and less of your identity is tied to old fears, rigid structures, or linear time. Instead, you start relating to life through connection, intuition, and a sense of unity that feels more natural than separation ever did. Overlap, on the other hand, is different. Overlap happens when multiple frequencies bleed into each other temporarily, without one fully replacing the other. Imagine standing between two worlds and feeling the pull of both at the same time. You might have moments of clarity and love that feel expansive, only to suddenly swing back into confusion, anxiety, or limitation. The two realities brush against one another, and in that brushing, friction is created. This friction can manifest in very real ways. You may feel restless without knowing why. Time may seem distorted, slowing down, speeding up, or looping in ways that make no sense. You might notice patterns repeating themselves in your life, as though a scene is being replayed with small variations, almost like a glitch in the matrix. For some, overlap triggers déjà vu, or the eerie sensation of remembering something that never happened in this lifetime. For others, it's a deep spiritual fatigue, as though carrying two sets of energies in one body is simply exhausting. Why does this happen? Because lower and higher frequencies are not always compatible. When your nervous system is wired for the linear demands of 3D, but your awareness is already tasting the unity of 5D, it creates a tug of war inside you. That tug isn't punishment, it's feedback. It shows you where you are still anchored in the old and where the new is trying to land. Think of it like electricity. When two currents with different voltages cross, there's resistance. The resistance doesn't mean the energy is wrong, it means the systems aren't fully aligned yet. Overlap works the same way. You are carrying currents from different dimensions, and until they harmonize, sparks will fly in the form of confusion, heightened emotions, or even physical disorientation. The key distinction then is this: ascension is stability. Overlap is friction. Both are part of the soul's journey, but they feel very different in the body. Overlap often precedes ascension. It's a signpost that two dimensions are colliding in your field, giving you the chance to release what cannot continue forward. So when you notice this strange dance between clarity and chaos, between expansion and contraction, it's not a sign of failure. It's a sign that you are standing at the edge of dimensions, learning how to hold more than one reality at once. And the more conscious you become of this, the more you'll be able to recognize the signs of dimensional friction when they arise. Now, how can you actually tell when it's happening to you? The truth is, dimensional friction has very distinct signs, experiences that feel unusual, often unsettling, but deeply revealing once you understand what they mean. One of the most common signs is time distortion. You may feel as though the clock is moving too fast, or that a single hour stretches out endlessly. Sometimes entire days can feel both fleeting and heavy, as if you lived through multiple layers of reality in one cycle of sunrise and sunset. This isn't just poor time management or distraction, it's a symptom of your awareness stepping outside the usual linear flow. When dimensions overlap, time behaves differently because you're brushing against frequencies where time doesn't run in straight lines. Another sign is the rapid shifting of emotional states. You may feel expansive, inspired, or full of love in one moment, only to collapse into doubt or fear in the next. These aren't mood swings in the psychological sense. They're energetic whiplash, the effect of moving back and forth between higher and lower frequencies. The emotional body feels the strain most directly, registering both the pull of the old and the call of the new. Then there are the dream bleed-throughs. Many people report vivid dreams that feel more like memories than imagination. Sometimes these dreams carry the texture of another life you never lived or another version of your story unfolding differently. In overlap states, the veil between dimensions thins and fragments of alternate timelines can surface. They may not make logical sense, but they carry an undeniable emotional weight, as if they belong to you at some level. Dimensional friction also shows up in what we could call existential flashes. You might suddenly feel a piercing clarity about who you are, why you're here, or the nature of reality itself. But just as quickly, that clarity dissolves into disorientation, leaving you questioning everything again. It's as though a curtain is lifted, then pulled shut before you can fully adjust your eyes. These flashes aren't accidents, they are previews, glimpses of the frequency your soul is aligning with, even if your mind hasn't stabilized there yet. Decision-making can become strangely difficult during these periods. Choices that would normally feel simple can feel impossible, as though multiple outcomes are tugging on your awareness all at once. This isn't indecision in the ordinary sense. It's the sensation of standing at the crossroads of timelines, each one broadcasting its own pull. That tension can feel paralyzing, but it's actually evidence that your consciousness is weighing more than one possible future simultaneously. Finally, one of the most telling signs is the push and pull between love and fear, trust and doubt. In dimensional overlap, you may feel deeply connected to a sense of universal support one day, and the next, gripped by insecurity or resistance. That energetic pendulum swing is part of the process. You are literally holding two frequencies at once, and your system is adjusting to find coherence. When these signs appear, it's easy to think something is wrong. But if you recognize them for what they are, markers of dimensional friction, they begin to feel less like chaos and more like confirmation. They show you that your soul is brushing against the edges of other timelines, other versions of yourself, and other ways of being. At this point, you may be wondering, is there any scientific backbone to all of this, or is it purely spiritual language? Interestingly, modern physics offers ideas that mirror what mystics have described for centuries. One of the most useful concepts here is superposition. In quantum mechanics, superposition refers to the idea that particles can exist in multiple states at once, up and down, here and there, until they are observed. The act of observation collapses the possibilities into one concrete outcome. In other words, reality doesn't decide until consciousness engages with it. This is not just abstract theory. Experiments in quantum physics, like the famous double-slit experiment, show that matter behaves differently when observed. Consciousness has a measurable impact on what becomes real. Now take that principle and apply it to the idea of overlapping dimensions. If multiple states can exist simultaneously at the microscopic level, why not at the level of lived experience? The many worlds interpretation of quantum mechanics even proposes that every possible outcome of every decision branches into its own timeline. From that perspective, dimensional overlap isn't fantasy. It's probability. It's the natural friction that arises when your awareness brushes against parallel versions of reality, versions that are just as valid as the one you currently inhabit. When you begin to awaken spiritually, your consciousness sharpens as an observer. You don't just collapse possibilities into outcomes unconsciously. You begin to notice the moment before collapse. You sense the presence of multiple timelines, multiple choices, even multiple versions of yourself. It's as if your awareness starts cross-referencing realities that your nervous system still thinks should remain separate. This is where the friction comes in. The human body and brain are wired to operate in linear time, to wake, work, eat, sleep, repeat. It organizes life as though there is only one track. But your soul doesn't experience reality this way. Your soul is multidimensional. It already exists across timelines, and when your awareness begins to catch up with that fact, your nervous system struggles to integrate the expanded perspective. It's like upgrading the software while still running on old hardware. The mismatch creates glitches. Those glitches are what you feel as déjà vu, time distortion, or the sudden emotional whiplash we explored earlier. They aren't random. They're the nervous system trying to reconcile multidimensional awareness with a 3D framework. In moments of dimensional convergence, your body is forced to hold paradox. You're here and not here, one version of yourself and many, moving forward and repeating at the same time. And yet, this friction is also a gift. The very act of noticing it means your observer consciousness is growing stronger. You are no longer blindly moving through one fixed timeline. You are standing in the space between them, aware that your choices and your state of being are actively shaping which version of reality solidifies. So while physics may not yet have language for the full spiritual scope of these experiences, it offers a striking parallel. Overlapping dimensions can be seen as the soul's version of quantum superposition, multiple potentials existing simultaneously, waiting for the observer, you, to anchor one into form. By now, it should be clear that dimensional overlap is not simply a glitch in your perception. It serves a deeper purpose in the soul's journey. The friction you feel when timelines brush together is actually a form of communication, your higher self speaking through the static. Think of overlap as an invitation. Each moment of dissonance is showing you where something in your life no longer resonates with who you are becoming. If you feel torn, heavy, or conflicted, it often means you're standing at the fault line between dimensions, one version of you trying to hold on to what's familiar, while another version is already reaching toward the future. The friction is feedback. It highlights exactly where you are stuck, and it also illuminates where new energy is trying to flow. On the flip side, moments of ease and synchronicity signal the opposite, dimensional coherence. These are the times when your thoughts, feelings, and actions line up with the higher frequency your soul is aligning with. Instead of static, there's flow. Life seems to open, doors appear, and opportunities click into place without struggle. Recognizing the contrast between interference and coherence helps you see overlap for what it is, a map of your evolution in real time. Another powerful aspect of overlap is that it creates what we can call choice points. These are pivotal moments where you are presented with more than one possible timeline. It might show up as a sudden decision that feels unusually weighty, or a recurring pattern that resurfaces until you address it differently. In those moments, you're not just choosing an option, you're choosing which dimension to anchor. Overlap is the arena where timelines can be rewritten, where old contracts can be released, and where your soul can consciously pivot toward new realities. It's also worth noting that this isn't only about personal growth. Dimensional overlap strengthens your ability to hold paradox, the capacity to be in the tension of opposites without collapsing into either side. This is a crucial skill for conscious evolution. When you can sit with uncertainty, love and fear, past and future, self and collective, without rushing to resolve the discomfort, you expand your bandwidth as a soul. You become capable of carrying more light, more wisdom, and more perspective without losing balance. In this way, overlap moments aren't interruptions, they are initiations. They stretch your identity, making room for a version of you that can live beyond the limits of linear time. The friction you feel is the soul reorganizing itself to carry greater coherence between dimensions. So the purpose of dimensional overlap is not to confuse you, but to awaken you. Every jolt of disorientation, every flash of déjà vu, every emotional swing is a reminder that you are not bound to a single reality. You are multidimensional, and the overlap is how your soul teaches you to live that truth. Dimensional overlap is not chaos, it's evolution. It feels uncomfortable because it stretches you, asking you to hold more than one reality at once. The static, the déjà vu, the sudden clarity followed by disorientation. These are not signs of losing your way. They're signs of expansion, proof that your soul is reaching beyond the limits of linear life. When timelines blur, your identity is tested. Old versions of you try to hold on, while new versions begin to rise. It can feel like being torn between worlds, but in truth, this is where growth happens. The overlap gives you the chance to see what no longer fits, to release it, and to step consciously into coherence with the reality that calls you forward. Remember, friction is feedback. Where you feel resistance, the old dimension is tugging at you. Where you feel flow, the new one is opening. Your task isn't to avoid the discomfort, but to listen to it. Each moment of overlap is a choice point, an opportunity to anchor a higher frequency, not just in thought, but in how you live and embody your truth. So the next time you find yourself caught in that strange dance between clarity and confusion, pause and ask, what if this isn't chaos at all? What if this is the echo of a reality I've already outgrown? Because in the end, dimensional friction is not a problem to solve. It's a sign you're evolving into the self that already knows how to walk between worlds.